we slip into a legal presentation of the gospel as opposed to a gospel presentation of the gospel. What needs to change in the lives of people, the whole concept of conversion, the whole point of conversion is you once lived in order to please yourself. You once lived on the basis of self-benefit, self-preservation, self. The transformation that takes place in the gospel is you deny self-supremacy and you now live to please and honor and serve God supremely. But in order for that to take place, a proper proclamation of truth, which produces that response, needs to be present. And that's a huge change in a person's life. Consequently, I think because of the fact that we want to see people accept the gospel, I think we've altered the gospel so that more people will accept it. But they accept something that doesn't bring about the change that the gospel is intended to bring about. And so consequently, there are a lot of people in the church who believe that they're saved, who are not motivated by love for God. They're still motivated by, what do I get out of this deal? In regard to that, this is the essence of moral virtue. When we do what we do to please the Supreme Being, when we do what we do out of a desire to honor and please God, that's the real essence of moral virtue. The other side of the illustration would be this. When the father says, I need you to clean up the yard, mow the grass, and trim the bushes, a son who has a proper love relationship with his father, he goes out and he does it because he sees it as an opportunity to express his love for his father. Is he concerned about the reward? No, the reward's not an issue. Is he fearful of a punishment? No, because punishment isn't an issue in a right relationship. That's why in 1 John there is a statement which I hear quoted quite a bit, but generally I hear it applied improperly. 1 John says, perfect love casts out fear. How many of you know what the next statement is, the next portion of that quotation is? And this is very important because it completes the idea. 1 John says, perfect love casts out fear because fear has to do with punishment. So what he's saying is this. You look at a relationship between the father and the son. If the son loves his father, does he have to be concerned with punishment? No, because he does what the father asks him. The only reason you have to be concerned about punishment is because you have no intention of doing what you were asked to do. And then you say, well, if I don't do it, what about the punishment? But perfect love does away with the concern for punishment because punishment is a non-issue when you're functioning out of love. Reward is a non-issue when you're functioning out of love. Now, I've had people say to me, oh yeah, but it says in the book of Hebrews that those who come to God must believe that He is and that He is a rewarder of those who seek Him. So reward is an issue. The proper response to that is this. The passage, it's important to understand what that verse does not say. It does not say that God is a rewarder of those who seek the reward. It says God is a rewarder of those who seek Him. Consequently, if we were to bring that into our illustration, we would say this. Father says to the son, I have a business meeting. The yard needs cleaned up, grass mowed, bushes trimmed. Son, out of love, goes out and he does it as a way of manifesting his love and honoring his father. When he comes back in, the father says, here's $20. Thanks for doing that. Did the son do it for the $20? No, but will a loving father take pride and pleasure in rewarding his children? Sure. But the son wasn't motivated by the reward. We know that God is a rewarder. We know that God loves giving. As a matter of fact, Gordon Olson said one time that love suffers when it cannot give. Selfishness suffers when it cannot receive. God is love, and He takes pleasure in giving reward when reward is due. But as His children, we are not motivated by the reward, we are motivated by love. Understanding that God is a rewarder. We have to have a picture of God whereby we love Him and trust Him. We do what we do because we love and trust Him. And the consequences of it are in His hands and in His charge, not in ours. Okay? Now, here's what we generally do. I think it is absolutely crucial for us to see this tendency and then to begin to re-envision what God is really up to in the gospel and how we need to start presenting the gospel in a more well-rounded way. The most popular, in one form or another, this is in a nutshell, this is straightforward, but then there are subtle variations of this all over the place. But what we generally do when we present the gospel is we say to people, there's this horrible, nasty, terrible place called hell, and you don't want to go there. You'll burn forever, and it's agony, and it stinks, and it's horrible, and it's terrible, and it's God's wrath and anger and burning and all this negative stuff. And then there's this other place, this wonderful, wonderful place called heaven. And that's where you want to go because it's nice and there's angels singing and all kinds of wonderful golden streets and all this stuff. Now, those two ideas are true. However, what we need to be concerned about is the motivating factor in people's decision to modify their external behavior. If you convince a person to accept Jesus so they avoid hell and gain heaven, what does hell represent? Punishment. What does heaven represent? Reward. What form of government operates on the promise of reward and the threat of punishment? Legal. So what we've just done is we've presented the law. That if you make a decision based upon the threat of punishment or the promise of reward, then we can guarantee you that you are right with God. Can a person decide they would rather go to heaven than hell and never love God? Absolutely. And all we've done is we've used the law to invite people to accept Christ. But we aren't saved by the law, are we? There's a way of presenting the gospel that is legal. And it does nothing to change the internal motivation behind people's religion. So what do we end up with? We end up with people who have a legal religion. The external is there, void of the internal reality and motivation that makes that religious activity virtuous. And I'll tell you what, they're some of the hardest people to reach on the face of this planet. Why? Because they think they're good to go. They signed on the dotted line. They have a legal transaction with God. God is obligated to take them to heaven because they got the ticket in their back pocket. And I think what we need to think about is go back to 1 Corinthians 3, whereby those who proclaim the gospel in such a way will be saved if they're right with God. But they will see all of the people that they've made this legal transaction with being ushered out of the presence of God. You understand what I'm saying?